Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews, this being a show where I talk about dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Promised Land. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, let's start off with the whole situation with Antonio and Joe. Antonio found the bones, and then I love that Joe's like, yeah, why didn't you tell me about the bones? I had to find out from Gonzo. I was like, whoa, wait. I was like, okay, I love the show flipping the script on you. So you're like, okay, so you didn't know about the bones. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, the watch was in there. And it's like, wait, that's not Honeycraft's watch. It's like, there's no way. He's like, in fact, you'll get the DNA. You'll give me your DNA and we'll have the DNA tested. And it was like, the fact is he's got it tested. He's wanting it tested. He's like, then I'll show you. I'll prove to you that I'm not a killer. And I'm like, that's so fascinating. I'm like, I mean, why would he go above and beyond like this from in front of Antonio and stuff like that? So it's like, yeah, no, he's not fronting. It seems like he really doesn't know anything about this. And it kind of played into the fact is, I brought it up last episode, Margaret was super suspicious about the way she was acting about it. Because especially the fact is that she was like, there's no way Joe was a killer. I'm like, the fact that she was so adamant about it, I think it's so interesting. And it also, obviously, it plays into the episode, too. But also, like, we still have never gotten Letty or even Billy's perspective on it. That was something I was like, they were completely absent from last episode when that whole thing was going down. So we never got their perspective on it. Now, it'd be interesting if we got Letty's perspective, because now we know the truth. I'm going to be jumping ahead a little bit. It did not cross my mind that it was going to be Joe's dad until like near the very end before it got revealed. I was like, because I was like, who is it going to be? And the person breaking it, I was like, yeah. And the moment it was all going down, I was like, oh my god, right? He broke onto the because they were trying to, like, the sad thing too is Billy gave him like a social security card, gave him, like, you know, a new identity and everything, and he kind of did what he always did. He squandered it, because it's just like, either he thought like he just can't break himself of his old habits, and so he was just like, right, there's a wealthy house here, I'm gonna get back on my feet in this way, but then I'm gonna set myself straight again, and then I'm gonna get my sons back. Like, I don't know if that's what he was thinking. Either way, sadly, things turned out the way they did. Of course, neither one of them wanted to know. Well, for one, that's so interesting. Because they talked about it before. They hinted to like the whole like, oh yeah, like we have secrets that could destroy each other, and even more so with Margaret saying like, oh, like if I go down, you're going down too. It's like Letty's the one who actually pulled the trigger. So, but it was like both of their well, it's an old gun. I mean, they probably got rid of the gun by now, or it's been decades, so who knows what they've done with it in that time frame, but neither one of them would tell Joe that, oh, we're responsible for killing your dad, because they both loved him. And I mean, Margaret loved him at the time, but also it's like, yeah, I don't want everything I built to come crashing down. So I think there's still probably a part of her that cares about Joe. But now you're like, but do you care about Joe because you care about Joe still, or is it just self-preservation at this point in time? I don't know. Letty's already kind of spiraling a little bit this episode, but that's just because of the Billy stuff. Who knows what's going to happen in the long run if the truth ever comes out? I mean, because because that's the thing. Margaret knows the body's getting investigated, but she seemed a little nervous at the beginning, but then like later on, you see her just kind of chilling fine. I'm like, she's really good at like that whole. Because it sounds so mean and messed up, but two-facedness, and the fact that she can be, like, knowing there's this deep, dark secret, but also you're putting on this front like everything's fine. Like, that takes skill. That's some pretty good art of deception there. So I'm like, I'm curious. Maybe because, once again, it's like, if I go down, Letty's going to go down too, so she knows Letty's going to fight tooth and nail if this ever comes out, to bury that secret even deeper. Because if Joe, I mean, because that's also the thing too. I guess it also benefits her in the long run, because she wants his family to kind of fall apart, because it's going to make it easier to swoop in. And it's like, right, she brought in Billy to kind of throw Letty off her game. And if Joe finds out that Letty's the one that not only did her and Margaret bury the body, so it's like, right, you were married to the woman who helped dispose of your father. You're also currently married to the woman who actually shot and killed your father. So it's like, yikes, big yikes. So it's like, yeah, the two women in your life lied to you for decades. So it's like, it's gonna sting a little bit. So the question is, like, what's this going to mean for Antonio? Like, his view on his father. and his mother, like, because he painted his dad as this villain, but then eventually when the truth comes out, it's like, wait, mom's not who I thought she was. It's like, yeah, but he may have been robbing the place, but the fact is, my mom, I thought my dad was like, oh, I super was ready to believe my father was capable of murder, find out, wait, my mother actually was. But then, like, you get into the minutiae of the details of, like, right, they're not just minute details, they're pretty important details of, like, he was robbing the place, they didn't know it was him at the time because he was wearing a ski mask, so I'm curious to see what the fallout of that's going to be, especially now Joe knows that the body is his own father. So the thing is, he's going to be putting in some time and effort to investigate this, and the truth will eventually come out, because truth never stays buried for too long. So, I mean, literally in this case, because it came to the surface. So, how ironic that Margaret wanted Antonio to do all this digging and wanted to take advantage of the situation to find some dirt on Joe, and inadvertently ended up finding some dirt on herself and Letty. It's, that's the irony behind it all. So, and obviously I touched on it a little bit earlier with the whole Letty situation about the whole her and Billy thing, because Billy knows him being around Letty, he doesn't want to cause more problems. It's like, I already did a lot being out of my son's life, being out of Letty's life, just kind of leaving the way I did. Him and his brother have a decent enough relationship right now, and he's not trying to ruin it. Plus, I think on some level, he must know that it's part of Margaret's plan, so probably even more reason why, because later on he leaves. But it's because, despite everything, there's still that connection between Letty and Billy. And even he tries to pull away from it. He's like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't even come here. Like, because she was initially like, we can't be around each other because of that, like, connection. Especially when you look into the past and, like, because it's like, obviously there's parallels of, like, right, the beginnings of Billy and her relationship plus Joe's and Margaret's and how complicated that is all across the board, because she talks about the fact that she doesn't even know how Joe feels. It's like, on some level, I think she did know, but it's just like, I don't know. Or maybe she really didn't know, but it's like, it seemed pretty obvious to everyone around. I mean, even Margaret recognized that, but even then it was kind of the thing of, Letty let that out a little bit, and like, it's like, you love Joe, and Margaret's like, you love Joe, and she's like, I'm in love with Billy, and she's like, you're in love with both, but she's like, I love Joe too, and she's like, you're not good from Joe, you're from two different worlds. She's like, me and Joe are definitely a lot more alike than you two are, and I'm like, that's interesting, because the reason why Margaret wanted to have that conversation, because like, right, we are friends, and I don't want that to come between us. Because Letty, I think what fueled a lot of that fire for Letty is the thing of like, right, like her and Margaret were becoming friends, but it is still that thing of, it is that stark reminder that I'm sure her sister would, a constant reminder of like, right, you are from different worlds, And that bothered Letty so much that, like, it's like, right, this is someone I care about, you're kind of taking away from me, because it's like, because it's almost like Joe will never fit in your world, ironically enough, he made his own spot in this world. But it's just, there's layers to, like, the complications between that. It is just that thing of, like, he will always be seen as the very derogatory term that, obviously because of the time, it's, well, not even just obviously because of the time, but because you don't see Margaret tossing around those words, but her dad sure is ill, but certain derogatory terms trying to, like, keep anyone like Joe down, to be like, oh, you're this, you'll kind of almost be, you'll never be above your station type of thing. And so Margaret doesn't see Joe as that. There probably could be some argument made of like, right, she comes from a very privileged position, and it's like, oh, right, like the white girl dating the Mexican guy, like, who works for your father. It's like, But I also think there's a little bit of, like, if you want to romanticize it, which I think I tend to, because I'm a romantic, I am at heart. I'm the sucker for a good love story. So I kind of take it as like a very Romeo and Juliet-esque situation, Or a very West Side Story, if you will. Whatever, I mean, it all, well, West Side Story and everything kind of pulls from Romeo and Juliet regardless, but still, you get what I'm saying. It all kind of goes back to Romeo and Juliet. But there's an element to that between, in their dynamic as well, so. It's not even like a love triangle, it is legitimately kind of like a love square complicated thing. Because, obviously, it parallels not only that relationship, but also the fact is that there's the whole labor law situation that's going on, because Letty ended up passing out. But Letty's someone that's young, And it's just like, Margaret's like, oh, you should take a break. It's like, I shouldn't be working too hard. It's like, you think you have an idea, Margaret, of what we do, but we work every day. It's the only way. We don't get breaks. It's like, yeah, you come down here, but it's not like you're in the fields with us all the time. You get to stay in Gonzo's trailer. Like, you don't really know. Like, don't talk like you really understand or you really know, because you can't possibly know. Once again, there's truth to it, but I'm sure Letty put her own spice on it, because that's also the, sometime after she found out about Margaret and Joe, and I think that rubbed her the wrong way, so... Especially because they did kiss in front of her, and she doesn't want to acknowledge that the fact is it bothered her. Which I think is kind of interesting, considering, like, Joe and Margaret danced together a couple episodes ago, and even then Letty was like, right, you want to meet him, it made me jealous, and I was like, oh, it's kind of funny how that all works out like that, like, once again, we've kind of been through this rodeo before to some extent, but... Yeah, like I said, circling back to it, like, Letty was kind of falling apart a little bit, because even Marta says, like, oh, you love Joe, but Billy is your passion. She was like, Marta, stop. Like, come on, it's not even funny, but it's like, yeah, Billy will always have a special place in your heart, because I think she probably was devastated the first time he left, and now that he kind of found his way back into her heart, that she doesn't hate him. Once again, it's easier to hate you when you're away, and Billy was like, yeah, well, what, now that I'm here? Like, And him leaving again, she kind of got a little drunk at the party, so that was really interesting. So we'll see kind of where things kind of go from there, especially finding out that, like, Billy left. He didn't just, like, not show up again. No, he fully packed everything and left. Because I think, probably thinking, like, no, this isn't what God wants me to do, and I've got to do right by my family. He cares about Letty, but he also cares about the rest of the family, and he's like, I can't do that to them. I'm not about to be like a homewrecker type of things, I guess. So we'll see how that plays out. But, like I said, obviously there's a conversation about the laboring situation. Like, there's a labor union and stuff about basically raising pay, giving people insurance and stuff like that. Because now, like, the guy that Veronica met at the gym and stuff like that is now the representative of the union, being like, okay, so you're treating your white workers better than your Latin workers. And it's just like, no, that's not the case, considering what it's like. Yeah, but it's kind of that conversation of, oh, you've kind of lost your way, you've kind of strayed away, you've lost your roots, essentially, is what the whole conversation is kind of about. It's like, yeah, you're a Latin family, but the problem is you've gotten so mingled with white people, you've kind of forgotten everybody else. Like, you got so busy. But it's like, it's a cutthroat world where it's like Joe had to do everything he did. Because I even love Billy's talking to Mateo about it. He's like, don't ever tell anyone, because I will completely deny it, but he's like, I would probably be a lot more successful if I was like Joe, if I handled things like Joe, because he's like, I've always been the dreamer, Joe's always been the doer. So, but that's the thing of, like, telling Mateo, you're not Joe, you're not me, just, like, be who you are. The fact is, because Joe's telling Mateo not to do the labor thing because it would cut into its profits, and it's like, right, you're just starting off business-wise. Basically, that it would cut into his business, especially with what he had planned. It's like, right, you don't want to be, like, stretching your money thin, especially with you starting out your goals, your dream. Obviously, Joe's coming at it from a very practical standpoint, business-wise and stuff like that. It is a thing of, like, yeah, happy employees, so, like, the better benefits your employees have, like, the better. But it's still just a thing also that Joe's like, yeah, but don't come into my situation and assume you know it, the ins and outs of it. Like, it's just Joe was looking at it from a bottom line situation, and Mateo decided that he was like, right, I'm gonna follow through, and I'm gonna follow my gut on this, and it might be the wrong move to make, but this is what I'm gonna do. And even Joe's like, oh, he's a fool, but Antonio's like, yeah, but he's got guts. So then you have Carmen, who was meeting with that that kind of PR person who ended up being like, oh, let's bring in not only people who are Mexican, but let's bring in, like, top chef people from different backgrounds, because when it comes to the Latin community, it's like, right, we're like, or just Latinx in general, it's like, we're not just, the barriers between everything is just, like, slowly dissolving, kind of, we're like all one group, one community. And so it's just kind of like, right, let's bring in everyone from the different backgrounds, and let's all kind of celebrate and come together in this moment. from the very beginning, you could be like, it seemed like she kind of flirting with Carmen, and it's like, oh, she's like, no, like, was I being too subtle? Let's go out for dinner. It's like, oh, like a work dinner? It's like, no, I don't do work dinners. It's like, yeah, I was catching those vibes. But she's the one that's helping Carmen, because Carmen isn't the most confident amongst her family, because, like, anytime she tries to broach an idea, it kind of gets shut down. She's seen as kind of like, yeah, the party girl of the family. She's like, yeah, they kind of feel like the only thing I'm good at is, like, tanning. And so, sadly, the party didn't... It was a success until, like, the union lawyer dude, like, blew up the whole thing to be like, oh, how much did this party cost? Oh, I'd say about $200K. Would have been nice if that went towards your workers. And there's some people who decided, like, not to buy any of the wine. That was kind of the whole point. Celebrate, get some people going home with some of the wine and stuff like that, so they can organically spread it around, get the name out there more, kind of put, like, you know, Joe's family's name even more on the map in certain demographics they weren't reaching beforehand. That was the whole point. I mean, that's always been Carmen's perspective, to reach a larger demographic than, you know, just the white people they basically sell to. But it kind of blew up in their faces the moment he did that, which I love. Veronica did not appreciate that one bit. Home dude came in, he was like, hey, sorry. He's like, oh, you want to hit me with the... She's like, violence? No, that's for the weak and for men. She's like, nah. Negotiation, rips it up just like he ripped up the first one. But she was like, I tried to have this conversation civilly with you and privately, and you blew up my spot. Nah, this is me negotiating. Because the thing is, he got it twisted. She's a lot like Joe in that regard when it comes to business. But it's also because he hurt her pride-wise. She got so much already going on. And I think it's like, you kind of picked the wrong time to piss her, because it's like, all right, here's another man, like, trying to dictate stuff for me. It's like, no. I didn't accept this shit with Michael. I sure as hell ain't going to accept it from some dude I don't know. Which is like, oh, he was kind of getting all flirtatious with her. It's like, yeah, that's super out the window. Because she even said it clearly, like, oh yeah, like, if this was a first date, there definitely wouldn't be a second one. But it's also like, yeah, because he went about it the wrong way. Because it's like, he's like, basically like, he's trying to say like, right, I kind of let my, you know, I don't know how to act at those fancy parties. It's like, no, you knew exactly what you were doing. But maybe he didn't think about the repercussions of what it would do, like how it would impact like the way people were going. It's like, you kind of knew. You knew on purpose. That's why you said what you said. Like, I get it, you're looking out for people, but that's also the thing for Veronica. It's like, don't talk like you know my family. Like, because he's the one that suggested, like, oh, they're the ones that forgot their roots and stuff like that. But don't ever get it twisted like you know my family. Because he was trying to say, like, oh, we're supposed to all be going through the same struggle, but you spent $200,000 on this party. So it's like, yeah, that was like Carmen's decision, but that kind of, like I said, ended up backfiring. But, I mean, I guess in the long run it worked out, because the whole point that the lady was saying for Carmen is like, right, you have, now there are two brands. There's the family wine brand, but then there's your own brand. This might not have worked out with the family brand, but it worked out with your specific brand. So kind of helping her branch out a little bit more and stuff like that. So that was really interesting. But yeah, like I said, Veronica's already got so much going on. Obviously, she talked a little bit about her with her mom. I think that conversation might have fueled some of that too, because Margaret had talked to her about, like, right, I've never met my granddaughter. It's like, yeah, but not by choice. You've kept me away. The fact is that when it was all said and done, she's like, yes, I wasn't there to tell you the truth, that, like, Joe hired the best lawyers. Like, obviously, she was like, right, so your lawyer's probably going to tell you that California favors the mother. And it's like, well, Joe had a huge team of lawyers, found every loophole in the book to make it so that I lost custody of you. Yes, I didn't handle things the best way. I wasn't still here. I should have been here at the very least to tell you the truth about things, how nasty the divorce was, how one-sided it was. But I wasn't, and I have to live the rest of my life with that regret. But here is my lawyer. I'm going to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to you, that you don't get screwed over in your divorce with a, like, just so you don't get sideswiped. And even Veronica was later on like, you actually called the lawyer you suggested, Pamela, and we're actually reworking our entire strategy. So welcoming Margaret in, letting her see her grandchild and everything. So slowly but surely the family, it, like, now that's 3 out of 3 siblings that are pro Margaret. Mateo, once again, Mateo isn't someone she's really going after, because for one, that's not her kid, that's Letty's, but also, like, you know, he has no stakes in the business. She going after everyone who has stakes in the business. Once again, when that truth comes out, not everyone's going to be happy, not just at her, Antonio either, but we'll cross that bridge when we will inevitably cross it. But I even love that cute thing of it, like, hey, you know, this is your grandmother. She's like, oh, we can workshop that a little bit. Like, don't call me grandma. But still. I thought that was a really cute thing. So at least, you know, once again, there's some silver linings to all of this, but I'm curious to see where this labor situation goes going forward, considering, because that's also the thing of, like, Joe knows what it's like to be on the other side. He remembers, you know, part of this episode was him and Letty going to Honeycroft. But it's like, I guess it's a different world when it's like when you're at the bottom and versus where you're at the top. You making hard decisions like this is why he was able to make it to the top and become, you know, going from, as Billy says, going from working in the vineyard to becoming the most powerful person. So, I don't know, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.